Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the Nadlan Zoom conference call. My name is Joe Berko. This afternoon, we're going to have a conversation with Marty Reasoner and Weiss as it relates to this pandemic, as it relates to crisis, opportunity, and a good look out to the future. Before we'll start with that conversation, we have a special guest with us, Avner Mendelson, CEO of Leumi. Avner essentially joined Leumi in 2007 and was named the executive officer in 2003. He was also headed the strategy and international operation as well as staff in his previous position at Leumi. And he's been a member of the board of directors since 2012. Prior to joining Leumi, Mendelson was a senior consultant at McKinsey & Company in London and was also served in the Israeli Defense Force. Also has a bachelor degree in international relationships from Hebrew University of Jerusalem and an MBA from Wharton School of Business. He's also a board of regents of the American Friends of Hebrew University. So good afternoon to you, Avner. How are you? How's the family?
Hi, Joe. Good to be here with you and everyone else. No complaints, really. All is good, and everyone is doing well, and even sane.
Under those circumstances, I would say things looks pretty well. And you're calling from Sag Harbor.
Yeah, we've got out of the city a few weeks ago, and yeah, been here. Frankly, not a big difference aside from the psychological feeling that it's a little bit more green around us. But honestly, we're basically in home 23 hours a day at least, so not really enjoying the Hamptons.
I completely my sentiments. I'm calling from Miami. It's as much as I love New York. I mean, I can only say that I have strong feelings and I would even say some sympathy for those that are staying in the city. I mean, in general, it's not an easy thing to be in an urban location, sort of like locked in and with the kids. Not a simple thing. But we're, we have a full audience right now. We have well over 150 participants, and I think we've reached a good capacity. This conversation is recorded, so for those who haven't been able to log in because we've reached capacity, just want to say that we're going to be circling this conversation for your ability to join some of the insights today. Avner, talk to us about what is the road to become the CEO of Leumi, and how did you even get there?
It's a great question that I saw before. I don't really have an answer, and I can tell you definitely it wasn't my plan, and I'm not sure I have a recipe for that. A lot of random and situations. I never planned on becoming a banker. And yet I am now 13 years and into sort of my second round of a crisis following the 07, 08, which is exactly when I joined banking. So I can't really point out to a path of saying, hey, I want to be a banker, I want to be a CEO of a bank. To me, it was always about opportunities to work with people that I wanted to work with, and then just being very open and attuned to opportunities that came. And if you would have told me 13 years ago when I joined Leumi and went back to Israel from London that I'm going to be in Bank Leumi for and then move to the US and be with the group for 13 years, I would say that you're out of your mind. I thought I'm doing a move to work with the then CEO of the group, who I thought was an amazing woman and leader that I wanted to spend time with. And I find myself, instead of working 2 or 3 years with her, working 5 years with her. And then at some point, her predecessor asked me if I want to move to New York and try to transform the bank in the US. And my wife said yes to that offer. And that's why I said yes to that offer. and 7 years ago we moved here, and that's basically the path. So I don't really have a recipe. There was definitely no plan for me to do that. So.
And yet here you are. I think that from what we know, things have gotten better since your tenure at Leumi. So kudos for that, for your work. What is it that you like most about leading Leumi?
The people, whether it's the people on my team, the people around the organization, the ability to have impact on those people and enabling them to have impact, and then the clients, the ability to interact with people who are, entrepreneurs, visionaries, that are doing things, and being able to get to know them and play, even if it's a little role in enabling them to achieve their visions. That's where I get my adrenaline and my excitement and my motivation. And I think it's true for most of our team. This is about the people we impact within and outside of the bank. It happens to be a bank, but I can tell you it's not the banking as an essence. It's the banking as a conduit to be able to influence others and have a positive impact.
I think that the underlying message maybe is the relationship, it seems to me. I mean, we're one of the beneficiaries of a significant loan. In my day-to-day, I run two companies. One is an advisory firm, Berko and Associates. We're headquarters in New York, Miami, and Phoenix. The other company is Astor Realty Capital, in fact, a private equity where we participate in transactions as limited partners. And I can say it was a pleasure. We're, as I mentioned, the beneficiaries of a significant loan, a little bit over $100 million loan in a project that we're doing in Brooklyn. Seems to be working really well. And I can only say good things about the experience that we've had with your bank and the interaction. What do you think are the necessary skills or the most helpful in your role, being with the bank for the last 7 years?
I think empathy and listening skills are, in my mind, the most important skills for any leadership role, and especially in a situation where you're transforming or dealing with change. I think the ability to understand people's motivations, to understand people's fears, to be able to listen and be open to ideas and relate to people is the most critical elements to that. I will not be the one claiming that I have perfected those, but I can definitely learn how to listen better. I'm not necessarily the most patient person out there, and I get I can get carried away and excited with my ideas very quickly. But I think these are the most critical skills that I've learned to realize that are so important. I think without them, you can't really build the relationships and the trust with others.
And do you think your role has changed, if at all, during the pandemic?
No, I think it's just crystallizing. I think the overall goal of being the best boutique relationship bank for our clients in the sectors that we serve, and to provide them a superb customer experience, this is the time where the rubber hits the road, right? We're trying to sell umbrellas when it's sunny all the time, and assuring people why bank with us, because we understand you, we'll be there with you, we'll work with you. And unlike some of I would say the more sort of money center and big banks, we know you and we know how to work with you, and you always have an address. And nothing like a good crisis to go unwasted, and to come and be able to prove it. And so I think it's more about amplifying what we stand for, that this crisis is going to challenge us, and we're just at the beginning of it. But I don't see our overall goals. Obviously, the emphasis in terms of time and attention is moving and shifting from more focused on supporting existing clients and the existing portfolio, as opposed to new business development. We're doing new business, we're booking loans and onboarding new clients, but that's taking a second seat to making sure we're spending as much time as we need and as much time as our clients need to spend with them.
So, first of all, that's refreshing. I know that not every lender out there is active. A lot are focused on mainly asset management, but what class of assets do you see the bank getting involved lending going forward?
So I think overall it's, and this is something that we will have to review as the uncertainty around us clears out a little bit, in terms of also identifying new opportunities and new segments that we want to go after. In principle, it's the same segments we're in. I think there is different levels of uncertainties in certain segments right now where it's harder to pursue new business in. And I'll throw one. If you ask me about office, commercial office in New York City right now, I would tell you that I have no clue how to underwrite them or how to evaluate them, and I would rather sit on the sideline. And frankly, I would even advise my borrowers to wait before they're sort of jumping into new transaction in that space. I think there's just too much uncertainty. But aside from that, it's the same sectors that we are. Our portfolio is about 40 to 45% real estate, and the rest of it is commercial, industrial. We have a big sector focused in the technology sector, serving to the VCs, funds, startups, providing them with lending and other services, cash management services. We have a lot of wholesalers across segments, from commodities, food, apparel, electronics, and we have a skilled nursing home sector and a bit of also sort of non-bank financials that we're serving. Obviously, in the context of this conversation, in the real estate, I would say that within our portfolio, about a third of that is construction lending, and almost 100% focused in the New York metro area. Residential is something we do across our offices, as well as mixed use and some commercial space. We don't really focus on hospitality and retail and sort of pure office buildings, but sort of residential and mixed use. A lot of value add situation, as well as some stabilized. Florida and California, outside of New York, are areas where we have presence and business, as well as Chicago.
I think that you can probably breathe a little easier, that you have very little exposure to retail and to the hospitality. Those are certainly the tougher hit segments in the real estate arena at the moment. It wasn't that long ago that if you were holding a portfolio of retail assets, today you would say, well, I have retail, but thank God, at least I don't have office. Avner, thank you for that. I really appreciate the time, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to go to the second segment of this roundtable and introduce our other participants. Evan Weiss of LW Hospitality and Marty Reasoner. Evan, will you please introduce yourself and your activity?
Thank you so much, Joe. Avner, thank you so much for that. That was excellent to hear, especially from a leader such as yourself, from such a venerable institution. Just first, I'd just like to say again, thank you to Joe and to Astor and to Nadlan for inviting me here today. Also want to wish everyone well across the entire spectrum. Make sure they and their families are healthy, safe, and well. So I think that's the most important thing right now. I co-founded LW Hospitality Advisors with my partner, Dan Lesser, and my other partner, Gary Eisenberg, back in 2011. So this is the first crisis as a firm that we are really participating in. Obviously, in our careers, we've experienced between the three of us, probably a half a dozen or so, at least 3 major crises along the line. LW Hospitality Advisors focused exclusively and solely on the hospitality and gaming spaces. We have 3 buckets of our business. Vertical 1 is valuation. We do appraisals, feasibility studies, market studies, litigation support, expert testimony. Vertical number 2 is third-party asset management, consulting, advisory. And vertical 3, we've recently launched a predictive analytics platform, LARC, Lodging Analytics Research and Consulting, focused on the top 25 markets in the U.S. at large, helping investors, borrowers, lenders, the entire gamut of the investment industry look and understand at hotels and hotel markets, and utilizing sophisticated and proprietary algorithms, which right now are all sort of blown out of the water, given the current environment and the GDP and RevPAR changes on a literally week-by-week basis. But again, focusing on the top 25 markets for predicting EBITDA, value, cap rates, ADR, occupancy, RevPAR, et cetera, and across all the major sectors. So again, really, I think in totality, a hospitality and gaming valuation advisory consulting firm, national, with work done in Puerto Rico, Caribbean, Mexico, some work in the UK, but probably 95% of our work done here in the 50 states.
Thank you, Evan. And again, thank you for joining. Marty Reasoner, Acres Realty Capital. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to share with us a little bit about the activity of Acres.
Sure, Joe. Thanks for having me, and I want to thank everyone else that's joined us here, and hope everyone is safe.
I think Marty is having some connection difficulties. We'll give him another second. Evan, share with us a little bit. What is it like on the day-to-day with LW? Are you going to the office? Are you spending time with your associates? What does it look like?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Interestingly, on the day-to-day, obviously I'll be quiet if Marty jumps back in. Want to give him the opportunity to present himself, of course. Seems like he dropped off. Yeah, so LWHA, we have offices throughout the country. We've got about 8 or 9 locations throughout the U.S. No one's going to the office currently. I go into the office sort of once a week just to sort of check in.
Sorry, did I get off?
Marty, you're back. Good.
Sorry.
We'll start from the top, please.
Okay, sorry. I don't know where I left off. I don't know what happened there. As I was saying, right at the start?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So, hi, everyone. Marty Reasoner from Acres Capital, managing partner. Acres Capital is a middle market national lender in the transitional space. So we do anything from ground up construction, adaptive reuse, repositionings, gut rehabs. We are on balance sheet lender. We service and asset manage everything in-house. We currently have about $1 billion of assets under management. About 22 people. We have a main office in Long Island, an office in Chicago as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Marty, what's life is like at Acres Capital these days?
It's interesting. I think that, the world obviously has changed a lot. I think that one of the advantages that we did have is that we do hold everything on balance sheet and don't lever our position. So we were, we're left in a position where we're not subject to any lines or warehouse facilities to make decisions. So, the biggest challenge today is just identifying risk in the right, just risk-adjusted return. We're seeing anything from, full portfolios to, mid-construction deals that maybe lenders have fallen off on, to our original originations. So we've done a lot of different things and looking at a lot of things, and are very active. And it's just trying to find the right opportunities right now.
Essentially, your line of business, I mean, you're in high demand. There's a pullback of capital at various sources, or from portfolio lenders or some of the alternatives. We've seen some pullback from those as well. you become essentially more popular. We've spoken a couple of days ago about a deal that came back to you. Share with us a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, we've seen anything from deals that have fallen out with other lenders that had tight timelines that, frankly, 6-8 weeks ago we may not have been competitive on, that had tight windows and kind of came back to us to. We had a transaction in Philadelphia that it was a mid-construction loan. I think it was 70% complete. The lender wasn't able to meet the going forward draw requests, so we were able to step in and provide that capital to buy the sponsor the time to complete the project, to get it to stabilization. So we're looking at a lot of those where maybe mid-construction deals that have fallen off, where maybe a lender can't meet that timeline, or there's cost delays with what's been going on and people being off the job, where we can come in at a good basis and be comfortable providing that capital to help someone finish projects.
Do you find that you're in higher demand now? How do you?
I think it's interesting. I think Evan and everyone had touched on it. Is the interesting thing, I think, in the progression of the way things have gone on. I think early on it was very slow for everyone, in that people were really just trying to understand what was going on in the market. And as we've moved on, we've gone from the deals that just had tight windows that were falling down, that needed to close, to the next wave of people that are interested in understanding, trying to move deals forward, trying to find out who's still active. I think there was a lot of people exploring where the market was, us as well, just trying to understand where the right values are and how to underwrite transactions. But as we move forward, I think you're seeing more and more opportunity sets, whether it be through acquisitions of portfolios or direct origination itself. But we have seen a lot in the last 2-3 weeks, as far as people that are, looking at projects that they need to, move these forward. They have, whether it be hard deposits, or they put a lot of equity already into the dirt and they're pulling permits that just need projects to go. And then you also have some projects that have just stalled. So we're seeing quite a bit right now, and we're still actively looking at good opportunities.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Evan, it's really no way to soften the blow right now. And the 5.4 million hotel rooms, the projection by Smith Travel Reports is that Q4 this year, occupancy will average around 20-something%. There's no way you can keep your obligations. You can meet your debt service requirement with such a number. How do hotel owners expect to run an operation moving forward, in your opinion?
Sure. So I think a lot of them are going to take up prayer. I think that's probably the first element to it. But kidding aside, I think it's really, really quite challenging at this point. So Smith Travel Research just came out with their new RevPAR numbers today. The RevPAR, I think, was down another 79%. In the last 3 weeks, it was down 80 to 82%. There's no group travel to speak of. It's down, I don't know, plus or minus. I think that the occupancy number for group travel is about 3.6%. I mean, it's pretty it's pretty dismal, frankly. So overall, there's a circumstance where everyone's in the same boat. In other words, I was on a webinar at the beginning of this, and with Jonathan Roth, who from 3650 REIT, he said, he quoted the Billy Joel song, "We didn't start the fire." In 08-09, the crisis was very much driven by commercial and residential securities, mortgage-backed securities. Sort of the activity of the lending market, of the real estate market, really led us into that. This is a health crisis. This is a pandemic. We did not cause this. The banks, in fact, for the most part, as Marty can probably tell us, and as Avner can probably tell us, they're in very good shape. They're in very good shape. They have rock solid balance sheets, especially the smarter lenders. They have liquidity. They have access to liquidity, and they're looking for opportunities. Yes, obviously they're trying to assess risk. All we do is hospitality. So it's funny, one of the earlier questions you asked me is what we're doing. What are we doing? My partners, my colleagues and I are literally on the phone for 8 to 12 hours a day between webinars that we're participating in, webinars we're listening to, and then conversations with clients and friends. We speak to 5 major constituencies in the marketplace. We speak to lenders, special servicers, we speak to attorneys, we speak to folks in the hotel community. That's obviously owners, operators, investors, and brands, and then generally, folks in the real estate space. And it's really interesting to see how things are evolving. It's one of those things where in the first 2-3 weeks we had a lot of conversations, and what we were saying was sort of new. We have to really take a look at, how do you look at value? How do you look at markets? How do you look at specific assets? What's the difference between full service, limited service, select service? How do you understand food and beverage? What's it going to look like when we return? What does housekeeping look like? Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it once per stay? How are you going to deliver service? What does the check-in process look like? All these different things. Candidly, everyone has ideas, but it's really everyone's best guess. We've been hearing from some really, really smart people that own thousands and thousands of rooms. There isn't a process yet. I think the one thing that we're seeing in the right direction right now is the cleaning process. Meaning Wynn came out with a 23-page, the resort casino company out of Las Vegas, who has casinos in China and Macau and other places throughout the United States. They came out with a 23-page sort of cleaning manifesto, if you will, for lack of a better term, where they detailed the health and safety procedures for both internally for their employees, which they care about, as well as for their guests. And you're seeing Marriott come out with similar things, and Hilton and Accor, and even Airbnb is going to try to do that. I think it'll be a little bit more difficult for Airbnb, just given that they don't own and or really control their inventory either through franchising or through management. It's really, the host process there. But Marriott and Hilton and Hyatt and all these companies, they're going to have to come out with, sort of a certified clean process whereby we as guests feel comfortable going in there and saying, did you do the Marriott certified clean? I'd love to see that. And then you're either handed or emailed a 10, 20 page document that details everything that they've done, the research they've done, all the doctors that they've spoken to. So there's so many changes ongoing from a financing perspective. Right now, there is no financing for hotels, a capital markets perspective, owner investor perspective, as well, of course, ultimately from a health and operational perspective on the hospitality side. And I'll be quiet in just a moment so you can ask another question. I know I've kind of taken this in a circle, but one of the most interesting things to us is also that no matter what we think we know, no matter how many capital markets people we talk to, a lot of it is going to depend on the municipalities. For instance, during this pandemic, some municipalities had stay-at-home orders, some didn't. Some enforced the ones that they had, some didn't. Some municipalities closed hotels, some allowed them to stay open at their 5-10% occupancies or wherever they may have sort of floated out there. And then when we return, what if you had a 500-person ballroom at a full-service hotel? What if you had a bar that had a capacity of 150 people? Does the municipality now say, hey, your capacity is now a third or 50% until further notice? What does that do to revenues? If you were a group hotel, if you were an urban hotel with heavy food and beverage, like in New York City with a chef-driven restaurant concept or multiple food and beverage outlets, do we now have one food and beverage outlet? Is it only grab and go? Do we have any sort of full service? And if we do, are there a third of the seats in there? What does that do to overall value, given that in many cases, not all, of course, and not even most, but many, food and beverage was between 30 and even 70% of current or projected revenues. How do we now go about valuing that when we don't even know what the municipalities are going to do, let alone occupancy and average rate, which are complete black boxes, quite frankly, right now?
Thank you for that. I think it's a tale of two cities. Not every asset is going to be weathering the storm in the same way. I think you mentioned, you hit the nail on the head. The group travel probably going to be very hard hit, as well as the hotels that are sectored around, to some extent, business travel. How many business owners are going to send their employees or travel themselves when they can actually get on a Zoom conference just like now and actually go through whatever they need to go through and avoid that trip altogether. The next big segment that I think that I'm very fearful of is the convention centers for the very But look, I mean, we went through this 2008. The hotel sectors went through 2 years of very, very hard period, and some positive things came from this. Tightening of budget of hotels, looking at technology as a way to replace expensive or unnecessary employees. The whole segment of employees is quite a concern. We have 8.7 million employees in the hospitality sector. There's about 45% that are now off their job. Obviously, we all hope that they will come back, and sooner rather than later. And it's quite commendable to see Hilton coming out. I think they came up with this concept. They're done a venture with the Mayo Clinic, as well as teamed up with Lysol to find new ways to disinfect, to make sure that all their employees are tested, some of them daily. You mentioned Wynn. We came up with infrared cameras to check who among their employees in various entrances needs to be tested or may not be feeling well, or all sorts of different things. There's certainly going to be new thinking, specifically in Marty's part of the equation, when he's going to lend again to the next hoteliers, who's going to come to him and say, I'm going to outfit an older hotel, I'm going to go ground up. I'm sure Marty will look for new sort of thinking, if it's going to be in terms of new ecological thinking, if it's going to be ways to lower carbon footprint, better use of biodegradable products, use of plastic, and ultimately cleanliness and disinfection. But I think the major question here, we're essentially looking at new form of travelers. The millennials' behavior is different. In the real estate sector, we are focused on location, location, location. I think the hospitality sector is focused on experience, experience, experience. And that's sort of like the main question. Once you put aside all the disinfection and making everyone feel more comfortable and traveling again, what sort of experience are you going to offer them when the generation that is all about why and who and how is looking for those sort of experiences? And this is something that we're seeing in almost every sector. Even if you're in the residential sector, then the concept of common and shared spaces has been a big deal, and future planning of new apartment buildings, and we're seeing them from basketball courts and from interaction and lounges. It's not unique to the hotel industry. Certainly the retail sector has been moving and shifting for the last several years from simply a buying to an experience itself. And those who haven't been able to adjust for the last 5 years, unfortunately, we're probably not going to find space in this new realm economy. Talking about environmental changes and rather even investor changes in general, Marty, how do you see your investors going forward? How do you see change in behaviors? If we're looking at the closest recession, great recession we can draw from, we've seen a shift to quality. Capital was looking for safe harbors. What are your investors are looking coming out of this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting in that everyone has a different view as to what's going to go forward, what's going to happen going forward, and no one really knows. So I think it's the same kind of mentality is sticking to what is still there. And it's interesting in that a lot of our investors, and we actually just opened and started a new fund last month with the idea is that there is going to be a wave of opportunity here, and that I think that if you stay with where you believe your core is in housing related assets at the right basis in quality markets with good sponsors, I think that that's where we feel like there is going to be opportunity. I think that there's still a lot of good assets out there that can be evaluated the right way, that are still going to be a need. And whether that's in the multifamily space, on, affordable housing, some independent living, those deals are still there, and there's opportunity set there if you're bringing a quality product to market in a market that has demand for it. I think if you look at markets with, where the drivers are as far as supply and demand, there's still a lot of opportunity set, especially in that, lower income, for sale. We're seeing a lot looking at people that are either older or younger couples that are they want their space, whether it be in townhomes or actual homes, but they may not want to own. So we're doing a few deals where we're providing, affordable rentals, but they're homes with your own yard. There's more space, you're spread out, and it kind of falls into, where this has led people, where people still want space, but you want something that's going to be affordable and you're going to be able to rent. So we have a few of those projects that we're looking at as well. So it has changed the dynamic a little bit. But at the end of the day, you look at where the opportunity set is, as far as there's still agencies lending on, quality product for your takeout. So we're always backing in a sensitized valuation as far as how do we look at this a year down the road? How do you look at 2 years if you sensitize it? Is it a good risk adjusted return? And to be honest, we're getting a lot of feedback from our investors that they feel like there's more opportunity ahead. I think things got a little bit tight towards the end, and everyone had been talking about there being a correction, and no one knew that this was potentially going to be the culprit of a pandemic. But I feel like the last 4 years we've been in that 7th, 8th, 9th inning in a way. So it is an adjustment of how people are looking at their assets and where real value is.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I don't think that the general concept is that any segment of any part of the real estate is going to disappear. There's probably going to be a good amount of shuffle, and it's going to be interesting what this new going forward or new normal is going to be. Essentially, we're looking into various stages. I think we're pushing ourselves out of phase one, which is complete enclosure in major cities, and it's just, you can't overlook the fact that in certain locations, there's just literally shy of riots where people are forcing to come out and go back to normal and go back to work. Evan, we spoke about urban hotels and mentioned that some of them will probably be less relevant going forward. We've actually kind of like did a back of the napkin conversation and analysis on assets. Can you talk to us about outfitting all the hotels and see that going forward?
This is because this crisis within the hotel space is so unique. Actually, Joe, you mentioned a few things earlier. The one thing I agree with you on most of the things. Things like automation will probably reduce headcounts at hotels, will also reduce contact points. So that it will affect employees in the long term. You may see a reduction in the workforce from, X, to maybe it ends up being 10, 20% lower, even on a long-term basis, even upon recovery of full occupancy. One thing I do disagree on, I think a little bit is that, this is similar to 08, 09. I think there was one pundit or one industry player who said that for the hotel space, this is 08, 09 plus 9/11 times 2. And you can do multiplied by whatever.
I said, I see Avner shaking his head in disbelief or disagreement. We'll ask Avner in a moment. What does he think that?
I completely agree with Evan. I think it's and we're not in the hospitality. I mean, we have 2 hotels in our portfolio of clients, which is an accommodations, and this is way worse than 9/11. Not just by the immediate response, but the sort of the expected tendency for travel to return and what period of time. And so I think there's, the new normal or the interim normal here is going to be much more prolonged than the post 9/11 and much deeper and much more violent. I think when we talk about it, and we focus on the new normal, we just to sort of talk about, especially as a lender or a bank, I'm thinking about who can survive this new normal period, and then thinking about what are the dislocations that have a much longer period. Frankly, and again, this is, I know nothing, I'll hear Evan, you know, I don't see hotels going away. I don't see 2 to 3 years down the line, you know, hotel occupancies, maybe 3 years, being necessarily significantly lower or demand going down from where it is today. You know, I think when you talk about retail, when you talk about office, I think that these are areas actually that while, you know, in the new normal, you know, the impact might not be 80, 90% down revenues like hotels, but from a longer term perspective, I am much more concerned about these asset classes and the dislocations and changes in behaviors than the fact that tourists will not come to New York and visit or even business travel.
That's a really, really interesting perspective, Avner, especially from someone who as you said yourself, you're not that involved in the hotel space, only have 2 hotels in your portfolio. By the way, we should talk about and change that, but we'll figure that out tomorrow. But it's interesting also, how do you know, to your point, how do you underwrite the volatility? Now that we know that 0%, that $0 revenues for 2, 4, 6, even potentially 8 weeks is possible, I don't envy the lenders who there will be lenders, right? But how do they sort of underwrite their own force? It has to be part of it. It can't just be like, oh, well, we're not going to lend on hotels anymore. To your point, that's not going to happen. And it's from a recovery perspective, listen, I truly believe that there are some assets in the hotel universe that could recover to today's RevPAR and EBITDA, even in 18 months. I also believe that if you're a major convention, full service conference facility in a Phoenix, in a suburban San Francisco, or wherever it may be, it could be 5 years. But it will come back. You know, RevPAR, EBITDA, we do believe, you know, by our very nature on the valuation side, we're typically optimists, but also pragmatic and realistic. And in being optimists with pragmatism and realism put in there, yes, it's going to take a long time, but it will happen. There won't be this sort of, you know, mass lack of travel going forward. Let's also understand something that, you know, the general public, generally speaking, likes to forget, especially bad things. So God willing, in 3 to 5 years, if there's not another pandemic, it'll be a harsh memory, no different than 08, 09, or even 9/11, but it will be a memory. And a lot of that travel and experiential travel, to your point earlier, Joe, will return. Kind of pivoting back to your original question, you know, before I took it off on a tangent, which I have a very bad tendency to do, in terms of hotels not reopening, either suburban or urban. You know, there are a lot of full service, some extended stay hotel that are what we know, that are known in the industry as functionally obsolete. If you've got, call it a 700 room hotel that's 220 square foot per room, it's older, it's in need of renovation. Even pre-COVID, it was suffering from relatively lower average rate. In New York City, for instance, let's use that as an example, you know, pretty much you open your doors and you were at 85 to 90% occupancy, you know, just because you as a hotel had a pulse, right? Obviously, that's not going to be the case for some time. By the way, the one differential between us at LWHA and most folks out there is that we know we don't know. That's the big difference here. We know we don't know what the recovery exactly is going to look like, because we've been having significant numbers of conversations. And let me tell you something. This is not a financial or real estate solution. This is a health solution. This is a psychological solution. And I can't tell, I'm not a psychologist. I'd like to pretend that I am one. I'm a hotel guy. We're real estate people. We don't know when, you know, Jim and Jane will feel comfortable putting their family on an airplane. We don't know when the CFO of X company will feel comfortable putting all their employees back on airplanes and or putting all of their team members in one place for a board meeting or an internal conference. You know, Expedia does their national conference in Las Vegas every year. Are they going to feel comfortable putting them and all their vendors and all their customers in one place at one time in one city? I don't know. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. And at what point do they feel comfortable, and under what circumstances? So it's really complex. But back to the point of functional obsolescence in hotels, you're going to see many hotels not reopen. We've heard estimates anywhere between 5 and 10% potentially. This is not a prediction. This is an anecdotal sort of furtherance of information. That it could be 5 to 10% of hotel rooms in New York City, which is roughly 8 to 12,000 rooms, do not reopen post-COVID. because of the fact that many of them were suffering before. They were probably at break even or maybe even pre-debt losses pre-COVID. And so now, with the optionality of reopening, bringing all the employees back, suffering months and months of losses on top of what was already going to be a loss is going to be really difficult. I will mention this word once, and I won't dwell on it. I believe that union hotels in many markets will have more difficulty opening, depending upon the response of unions with regard to work rules and staffing levels and benefit and comp levels. It will make it that much more difficult. I'm not saying it's their fault in any shape, way, and form, but that could potentially make it that much more difficult for many hotels to reopen. And in places like New York, where if you have a hotel on Lexington or Park or Madison or Fifth, where there's significant number of potential uses for that. Maybe if you have a hotel that's built to 400,000, but the FAR allows for a construction of 650,000 square feet, maybe it's a knockdown. Maybe you keep it closed until it becomes a viable site, and it's worth more on a per square foot for the FAR than it is in an actual operating hotel. Someone comes and converts it to office, creative office, multifamily. By the way, maybe it stays a hotel, but maybe it's 250 rooms and it's no longer 700 rooms. And the hotel becomes office and affordable, homeless. We all know that there's a need for homeless and affordable in New York City. Maybe a lot of these hotels convert to those uses because they've simply become mathematically a higher and better use. So there are a lot of questions in urban markets, but even in suburban markets, there's a lot of 30, 40-year-old, what we call big box, sort of 250 to 500 room full service hotels that are sort of on their third brand, if you will. They started off as, one of the premier sort of Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, IHG type brands, and now they're down branded over time, and they're sort of on that third or fourth brand before they become either dirt or something else. That their life cycle is probably hastened toward the end of being a hotel, whether they're knocked down for alternative use or they're reconverted again to that creative office, affordable multi student housing, although that has its own problems right now with a lot of international students maybe not being able to get back, and all these different types of things. So there are a lot of opportunities. It's not that there is no value. And candidly, that also becomes an opportunity for the existing hotels. If you're a hotel in New York City and there's approximately 120,000 hotel rooms, and it happens that 10 to 15,000 of those rooms don't come back online. I mean, remember that we had a 30,000 room hotel pipeline. Granted, we could talk about supply as well as to what that pipe looks like, but 10 to 15,000 of those rooms are actually already under construction. And it is likely that most, if not all of them, get completed as hotel rooms. But that does bode well for the market overall for the existing hotels, especially considering what we were talking about earlier on the convention side. Remember, New York City is a little bit different, but in places like Chicago, San Fran, San Diego, much of these markets, their average rate is supported by compression nights, sellout nights in a market. How do you create compression or sellout nights in a market? You create compression nights primarily through group, especially in big group markets like in Orlando, which has a great convention center and airlift, or had great airlift. Diego, as I said, San Francisco, Chicago, McCormick, and Navy Pier there, right? So without these sellouts, without these big conventions, without that sort of group base, it's going to be even more difficult to push occupancy and certainly to push average rates. You're going to see even more suffering in many of these markets that will be helped slightly by the fact that some of these hotels simply don't reopen due to that obsolescence. So it's very intertwined. It's really complex. And as I often joke, I try to make the hotel business sound as complicated as possible so that you call the right advisors when you need them.
I'd like to echo what you said. I think the muscle memory is there. There will be a point in time, we've seen it time and time again, that things do return to normal. Drawing back on something that Barry Steinlich had mentioned several weeks ago, he said we're looking into World War III for 90 days. So I think, whenever we try to look at what the near-term future, long-term future, we tend to clash those conversations together. And I think we should be given a little bit of a segment in time, because the economists are looking into some obviously severe contraction of the economy going forward in the next couple of quarters, and of course the first quarter of this year. with some optimism that the fourth quarter of this year will see some expansion and maybe coming out of the recession. If that's the view, and these economists are correct, then 2021 essentially will be some sort of a return to normal, and then maybe even cautiously optimistic, maybe even a roaring 2021. But the more we go through this pandemic, the more we see that we're a part of a global networks of countries. We all rely on each other. You mentioned supply chains. Where's the new supply chains coming from, and what pricing and traveling? This country is relying on tourism. It's a good segment. It may not be maybe only a single digit in our GDP, but nonetheless, we're talking about a very good segment. I think the most worrisome aspect of every recession and or crisis like we're going through right now is the lack of spending. We're all sitting at home. We're not. There's no money flowing into the economy. I think the Feds, the Congress have done some pretty big moves. $2.2 trillion infusion of capital is essentially the GDP of Brazil. It's sometimes we don't grasp of how much capital is being infused. One of the question is, are we also going to be looking into coming out of a crisis into some sort of an inflation? There's plenty of conversations about that. Marty, what do you think? What's the world look like going forward in your view?
Well, I think from our view, it's like everyone's kind of touched on. It's you're cautiously optimistic that the world will come around. I think it's funny when you're having these discussions as far as what's going to happen. It's really based on what side of the fence you're on. I talk to a lot of people in the market that are brokers or sponsors directly, and they think it's 30, 60 days and everything's going to be fine. And then you have another point of view. It's a 2-year recession where values have all been hit by 25, 30%. So it's really just trying to understand, the way we look at the world is there's obviously a lot of big macro pulls, but the way we look at it is we're dealing in real estate on direct assets in submarkets. Then how do they fit into those markets? So our view is how does this fit and why? And if the valuation make sense and worth the risk moving forward? So it's really on an asset by asset basis in location by location as well. And you believe that if you're in at the right basis and there's enough time, and the one thing that it's interesting, everyone believes and longest time thought that the construction loans were the ones that were going to be the most at risk. It's funny, all of our construction loans have contingencies. They have interest reserves. They're the ones that aren't an issue right now. So, thinking that you're doing a loan now where there's construction, heavy adaptive reuse that's, 12, 16, 18, 24 months out, if you feel like if you're at the right, value that with time, you're going to be in a good position for an exit. So it's really sensitizing where exits are today. So you have real data. You look at where Fannie Freddie is today. You look at if you sensitize those, if you push cap rates out, if you look at whether it be a 10% reduction in rental rates, does that still make sense? It's kind of how you have to view the world right now. So similar to what was being said earlier, some of these first conversations you're having with borrowers is, obviously we like the asset, but, tell us the main reason why you need or want to get this out of the ground today. Does it make sense and why? And would it be, we can't tell you it's going to get better. We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball, but as of today, it's a difficult proposition as far as valuation. So, the way we look at it is really understanding, the business plan on an individual basis with the sponsor.
Joe, if you could just comment on the valuation side for one moment for hospitality. I think Marty made really good points. It's interesting, and you mentioned this, are we looking at today? Are we looking at the, sort of long term? We've always sort of held the opinion as a firm that hotels are fundamentally long-term hold assets. They're, yes, obviously somebody invested in the hotel business in 09, 10, 11, and they sold 3 years later, they made a lot of money. But generally speaking, hotels are 7, maybe 5, but 7 to 10 year or more hold investments because, you have to be able to hold through the good times and the bad, and be able to sort of weather the entire spectrum of a cycle, you know, and hold through the bad times, such as we're experiencing now. And to Avner's point, you know, we will return, and it will take time. And so that's what your investment thesis really should show, you know, which is why whenever, you know, you look at a valuation for a hotel from the valuation community, even many brokers, you know, will utilize a 7 or 10-year discounted cash flow analysis. And that's why you don't typically on hotels that are, you know, valued above $6-7 million and all the way up to $1 billion or more, you use a DCF, you use a discounted cash flow analysis because of the long-term hold nature and volatility over that hold period. And one thing in the valuation space that's probably prevalent now more than ever is you know, the fact that when you do evaluation, it's part art and part science. The science is the math, right? You could say we're valuing something today. There's no debt available, and when debt does come back, there'll be, you know, an expansion of spreads, right? What will that be? Depends on the asset, the market, probably anywhere between 100 and could even be 300 or 400 basis points on the expansion side of the spreads. And then also looking at, so you have the expansion of spread, and then you have the hold period volatility, the fact that you don't know when revenue will actually return. And when revenue returns, you know, what will that ramp up look like? And when will profitability return, even pre-debt? Right. So all these different things, again, you know, are factors in sort of the science part of it. And you can mathematically figure all that through. The art part of it is, in this case, where we talked about the psychology of it. When do people feel comfortable, you know, traveling again? When do we all feel comfortable putting our teammates on airplanes? When do we feel comfortable going on airplanes from a business transient perspective and on the group side, et cetera, et cetera? So, you know, I think the value is highly, highly sensitive to specific assets, specific markets, specific demand structures. Demand is now the conversation versus supply. And then you can also layer in what's happening with the market. You know, has the supply pipeline diminished? And will there be net negative supply in the sense that existing hotels don't reopen or reopen on a smaller basis? So valuation is probably more complex than ever, with all joking aside, and it's something that really has to be almost tailored on an asset by asset basis. We're often asked, you know, what's the percentage decline in value? And I think anybody telling the truth says, I don't really know. The market doesn't know. Yes, if you had to sell something today, people throw darts at the wall and they say, yeah, I'll take your asset off your hand for 30 or 40% off of a pre-COVID value. But that's just a buyer saying, if I had to take this today and if I had to buy it cash, yes, I'll take the risk if I'm getting 30, 40 cents on the dollar discounted, or 50 cents, whatever that number is, discounted, you know, for that risk. But in reality, that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, if there were a willing buyer and a willing seller and an efficient marketplace, which are sort of the tenets of valuation, that is in fact what the property is worth. So.
Thank you for that. We're running into the end of this conversation. I just want to go very quickly. Avner, closing words. Sorry, I have a couple of emails came from our viewers, so maybe we'll give this a moment. I have a question from Charles Socia, specialty in the timeshare space. What do you feel is the, I would guess we're sending this question to Evan, with specifically focused on the timeshare space. What do you think is the outlook on the short-term, long-term customer acquisitions? And do you see hotel companies becoming more critical to providing contributions as revenue streams?
I'm going to answer the second one first. Yes, the answer to the second one is a simple yes. We do believe that hotel companies will be more and more important. Number one, from a reliability perspective, again, sort of Marriott certified clean and Hilton certified clean, et cetera. So we do believe that brands will probably fare better, certainly in the short and medium term, and potentially even the long term. We likely will see a number of independents affiliate with the brands. The brands are actually very well positioned for this with their soft brands, you know, Autograph and Tribute and Luxury Collection by Marriott, and Hilton has Tapestry and Curio, and Hyatt has Unbound, and, you know, all the way on down. And so the brands are actually very much positioned to acquire a lot of these independent hotels. So we do see the brand contribution, the reservation system, the marketing systems, their dollars, and their reliability to be a major factor for success going forward. So we see that as a positive for brands for sure. Also, all the brands as C Corps are highly liquid and from a capital markets perspective will all likely survive, is what we're being told. In terms of the timeshares, I don't really know, to be candid. My guess is that two things. Number one, folks will be less likely to buy into like a hotel where people are constantly using their own unit. I think that's going to have potentially less allure than it may have had at one time. And the second part of it is that timeshares are pricey. And I think that I'm not an economist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think we'll see sort of a pullback in spending, a lot more savings for those who do have jobs. Those who don't have jobs, unfortunately, it's going to be even worse. So I just don't see larger purchases like, spending $25,000 on a timeshare or even $10,000 on a timeshare. I don't see that I certainly don't see an uptick. If anything, I see a pullback, at least for the next 12 to 24 months, as both travel, the hospitality sector, and the economy in general sort of stabilize itself. So I do see a pullback in timeshares in that short to medium term. For sure, long term, I think it's similar to the hotel space in that it will likely return itself, and people either forget or want to sort of compartmentalize what happened. But yeah, definitely a pullback short medium term.
Thank you for that. We do have another question that is CMBS related by Eitan Binyamin from New York, a good friend. Eitan, I hope you're doing well and the family is doing well. Eitan wanted to know about what's your reaction. What do you think the reaction of the CMBS market to the hospitality crisis? Now, none of you are CMBS players. Leumi's balance sheet as well as Acres. I know that Evan is more involved with the CMBS segment as an advisor. But I'll tweak the question to make it a little bit more relevant to our topic, to our participants. In terms of underwriting, are you planning, or is there a conversation to add additional reserve requirements that you wouldn't be asking for before, or is going to be a push down on LTVs? Again, V being the major question always in lending conversations. We're seeing that the agency lenders have now implemented new guidelines where quite additional more reserves are going to be placed on the assets that they're taking. Avner, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's no one formula for this, Joe. So this is what we're going to be asking. I think there's definitely an issue with valuation. So we can talk about LTVs, but what's the V in the LTV is the biggest question. For us, it's very, very much right now a situation by situation driven, a little bit like what Evan said on the hotels. It really depends. Who's the sponsor, levels of liquidity, the situation and location of the assets. All of those things are driving decisions. So everything is tighter, absolutely. But it's not that we can say, okay, the formula changed from X to Y, and now we're sort of taking everything through that processor and we get the answer. For us, it's always been, and now it's sort of, again, the time we started with relationship, we'll end up with a relationship. It's all about the relationship. And it's all about the sponsor and who's behind that and how are they planning to support it while we're supporting it and working through this together. Because, again, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know when there's going to be a vaccine, if there's going to be a vaccine, what's going to be the reaction of people. We don't know how deep the economic downturn is going to be and how we're going to get out of that and how many dead men walking we have around ourselves. What we know is, like, who do we want to walk through sort of this foggy and stormy environment, and who do we believe we can work with? That's more than the driver than what's the asset class and what's your location and what's the LTV. So I probably gave a long answer with saying that I don't have an answer for you of what are the elements, but it's all the above. We'll definitely ask people who have equity to put more equity when they can. We're definitely going to want to say there's sort of liquidity reserve. We're definitely going to waive covenants. In hotels, we're going to waive shitload of covenants that are just not relevant to have right now. But it's going to be really just sponsor driven.
Right here. Thank you, Avner. Marty?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that, whenever you're talking to people in the market and as everyone is trying to gather information where you are, I think, people want a lot of, they want hard facts as to where you're going to be on certain classes. And I think it's like you said, it's really driven asset to asset. I think in general, we have delevered where we were 6 to 8 weeks ago. We're hitting, end values and cap rates. The other thing is, a lot of our deals, there's heavy value creation. So you have to believe in the business plan. And as Avner said, it's really on the sponsor. Do you believe in the sponsor? Do you believe in the market? And does the product make sense in the market? Sensitized to where the takeout is, whether it's sensitizing on a for sale product, whether it be condo or homes, or where the agencies are. And I think, we're in constant contact with that side of the market as well to understand, where takeouts are today, and are people active, and how do you look at it when you underwrite your own transactions. And, it's like you said, is you're really just trying to be, as cautious as you can without taking yourself out of good deals with good sponsors. So it's really sponsor and location driven, and it's really basis on it. Do you feel comfortable in the long term that basis is going to work?
Thank you for that. I think
I would agree. Just to tag on for a moment. First and foremost, CMBS for hospitality specifically is just not happening for the next 6 to 12, maybe more months. It just won't be there. So CMBS for other asset classes, I'll let the other two gentlemen comment on that. I'm much less familiar. I think spreads will expand. Exactly how much, again, it'll depend on sponsor, asset, etc. Will decline. Everything we're hearing from any lenders right now that are either extending loans or looking to rework loans. Number one, liquidity and cash is king, right? I think to Avner's point, we know of one particular deal where it's a very well heeled, very, very well capitalized, private equity family office in the Northeast. And they're looking, and so they have a loan of, call it $100 million, and they were able to put in $10 million, buy the loan down, and then get a 3-year extension instead of going out and getting new debt. Maybe the interest rate expands by 100 or 200 basis points. But number one, to Marty and Avner's point, you have a phenomenal sponsor. They have the liquidity buy down. Now the bank just took $10 million back into their coffers. They're thrilled because they just bought down their risk, right? And not only that, but they maintained a great sponsor. They worked with them. They extended the loan. By the way, they were about to lose the loan on a refi, and now they're able to keep that sponsor and that loan in house. And this is just one example, and it's anecdotal, but it's real time. So they went from a 70% loan to value on the old number to a 60% loan to value on the new debt number, which is bought down. And they need to reach that on a stabilized basis. Stabilization could be 3, 4, or 5 years out. So it was interesting, yeah, that's all mathematical and that's all great. And they can all tell themselves, yes, it's 60% on the new bought down loan. But to Avner's point, I don't think this happens without knowing that sponsor at some point, if need be, could stroke a check and say, hey, we're making you even, or we're even taking out the loan at maybe a small discount or whatever it may be. So and it's so interesting to watch how this is a balance sheet lender and how private debt is responding, and certainly how the CMBS and the special servicing markets are responding to all of this, which is just an entirely different conversation. And frankly, all of our conversations with special servicers, master servicers, and CMBS workout consultants, our conversations are very much that pre-COVID workouts, whatever we knew for the prior 15 years, and post-COVID workouts, there's a line. And pre-COVID, you probably had to buy down, you probably had to put in new equity, et cetera. Post-COVID, I don't know exactly what it is, and I don't think anybody does, because all the servicers are responding differently, but there are definitely a different set of rules. So interesting to continue to watch how this unfolds.
Yeah, definitely. CMBS is different breed of lender. I think somewhat, I think one of the major differences is the fact that we have in this panel lenders that are highly focused on relationship, where the CMBS, you're sort of like, part of a pool. You're talking to folks who don't necessarily know you or choose to know you. And it makes those situations much more complex. We are certainly out of time, but I wanted to thank you all. Thank you, Avner, Evan, and Marty. It's been fantastic. It's been insightful. And to sum up with those words, it was said before that a recession is when your neighbor's out of work. A depression is when you're out of work. So I hope for the very best for all of us, so that we'll return back to whatever it means recycling to the office a couple of times a week, or what it means opening up different sectors. which we're seeing that are coming back, including the hospitality, including major brands, with looking forward into seeing what the new normal look like. Again, I want to thank you all and thank you for all the audience that have been with us, and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay healthy and be well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, guys.